Okay, so Trouble Every Day is a 2001 film by director Claire Denis, which kind of synoptically just focuses on a newlywed couple that's on their way to Paris for their honeymoon. But unlike your average couple, Shane, the husband in this situation, is a little bit of a weirdo. And if you're wondering why I'm saying this so early on in the film, it's because on their way to Paris, how do I put this? He imagines or fantasizes about his wife being dead. And he seems to really struggle with this thought. So Shane's goal once they land in Paris is to find Dr. Leo, who's apparently a doctor who's, I guess, researching what Shane suffers from in hopes to kind of find a cure for it. Now, the problem is Shane's urges are getting stronger by the day. And Dr. Leo's wife, Corey, which we'll get to later on, she's a full-blown cannibal / vampire, I guess. So Trouble Every Day premiered at Cannes in 2001, and it's safe to say it traumatized some people. According to reports, a lot of people walked out, a lot of people started booing, and a couple of them even fainted. So, well, yeah, I think the film does depict some pretty extreme and intense situations, which include, violence and gore. I think it's way deeper than that, which is why I'm making this video, really. In this video, I'll be doing a full breakdown of Trouble Every Day, analyzing certain scenes, symbolism, cinematography techniques, and why they're helpful, and just overall exploring some of its themes. Hey, I'm Barack. It's like Barack but with a V. Heads up, there will be spoilers in this, some trigger warnings as well for violence and gore. So if you're not comfortable with that, I highly suggest you click off this video. Trouble Every Day opens up with a scene of a couple passionately making out in the back of a car, which instantly sets the tone and establishes some of the core themes of the film, like lust, infidelity, and sexual tension. Yet our story doesn't begin until we're introduced to Corey after the opening credits. Posing as a woman in distress on the side of the road next to her broken down van, she lures in a truck driver who's hoping to get some while on the job. But things don't go as planned, at least for him, when we cut to nighttime and Dr. Leo shows up on his motorcycle to find the corpse of the trucker in the field with his pants off and a blood-stained Corey nearby. The interesting thing is, he's not surprised when he finds the body, and she's not surprised either that he found the body. Also, mind you, we're about 8 minutes into the film and there's still no dialogue. This film is kind of the epitome of show don't tell. 35,000 feet in the air, we're introduced to the newlywed couple, Shane and June Brown, who for their honeymoon have decided to visit the least friendly city in Europe, Paris. So straight off the bat, Shane gives off some weird vibes, which says a lot about the acting in this film. There's this part where he picks up June's arm and starts kissing her wrist and making his way up, which is, some people will say I'm looking too deep into this and this is just like some normal behavior, but I think that's 5 kisses too many. If you still don't think he's a weirdo, hold on, because while everyone's sleeping on the flight, he goes to the bathroom and fantasizes about his wife being drenched in blood. Yeah, because that's normal. The interesting part about his fantasies, though, is that he seems to struggle with it. It seems to bother him. It's not like he's giving into it and accepting it for what it is. He understands it's wrong, right? There's an internal struggle happening there. His physical kind of urges versus his emotional state. Back on the ground, Dr. Leo's getting ready for a regular day at work by double locking his windows with a key. That sounds like a good precautionary measure given his wife's recent behavior. Corey, the wife, tries seducing her husband, but he quickly shuts her down, showing an obvious lack of trust in the relationship. We also see Corey throwing away some pills that are on her bedside table, implying that Dr. Leo has been experimenting with a cure for her condition. And right when you thought this couldn't get more complicated, we're introduced to the horny teenage neighbors. These guys live across from Dr. Leo's and seem to be aware that Corey is isolated in a bedroom with locked windows. It's also important to know that they don't know about her cannibalistic or, I guess, vampiric tendencies. So if you remove that aspect of her life, she does come across as a kidnapping victim. So then we cut to Dr. Leo at work, where he's examining a patient who's told to cut down on the cigarettes. And the patient says, "I will," and Dr. Leo responds with something along the lines of, "That's what you always say," type of thing. And I think this is really interesting because Claire Denis does a really good job throughout this film linking the condition that Shane and Corey struggle with to addiction, portraying addiction and strong emotional desires not only through the eyes of the addict but also through the eyes of their loved ones, of the people around them. So Shane and June arrive at the hotel and Shane's urges get stronger. As they're escorted to their room by a hotel maid, we cut to a close-up of Shane's menacing stare and a close-up of the back of the maid's neck. Both of these shots are handheld, which makes the viewer interpret the back of the neck as a POV shot. We are looking through the eyes of Shane like a predator eyeing down the prey. So once they're at their room, the maid starts making the bed. Shane picks up June and lays her on the bed as the maid is making the bed, which is weird because you're kind of blocking her way. The weirdest part about this kind of situation, and it kind of happens a few times throughout the film, is that no one addresses anything. Just pure silence, no dialogue. No one says anything. Everyone's minding their business like this is normal. And at this point, Shane switches his focus to the maid. And this is where things get super weird because both the maid and June realize that Shane's staring at the maid. Yeah, it's a very uncomfortable and claustrophobic scene, but also it's the only time in the film where you get the three of them together in a room, because for the rest of the film, it's only going to be two of these three characters at a time. I think this scene does a pretty good job at setting up the sexual tension between Shane and the maid, but also kind of portrays the isolation of June because she can kind of pick up on what's happening. It's just she's kind of left out of it, if that makes sense. So later at night, we kind of see Shane, I guess, touching himself while June's in the shower. I'm not sure the reasoning behind this. Maybe it's part of what he's suffering from at this point. Narrative-wise, you really don't have that much information to go off of. As the viewer, you're just kind of taking things as they're shown to you. But we also see him take some sort of medication, which might explain why he's more in control of his urges compared to Dr. Leo's wife. We also get a little bit of a hint when we're shown June's shoulder, which has a bite mark on it. So back at Dr. Leo's house, Corey escapes. If you're wondering how she escaped from a room where the windows and the doors are double locked, she used the power tool. Yeah. And in classic Corey fashion, she lures in and devours her next victim. Now, as expected, Dr. Leo shows up and kind of helps her get rid of the body while she sits in the van and she's all kind of teary-eyed. And this is really important because I think this is the first time in the film where we get the emotional side of her. It seems like after she kills, she gets some sort of maybe clarity. It's hard to tell if she feels bad about the victim or her actions, but she definitely feels bad about Dr. Leo having to clean up after her. And this assumption is confirmed shortly after when Corey tells her husband, I don't want to wait anymore, I want to die. This seems to be the only dialogue there is between Corey and Dr. Leo throughout the whole film. Actually, it's the only line Corey has in the whole film. I don't want to wait anymore, I want to die. It's really interesting how Claire Denis is able to humanize Corey after her appalling actions. As much as we dislike her as viewers, we can't help but feel some sort of, I guess, some level of sympathy as we understand her actions are to some extent out of her control. And the fact that this is her only line throughout the film makes you understand how distant she's been kept up to this point. We've only been able to connect with her based on what we've been shown, and we haven't been shown the best. So we then get a very interesting montage of one of the teenagers, Shane and Dr. Leo, all in their separate environments, just struggling to sleep at night. It kind of draws similarities between their lusts. They're all lusting for very different reasons, yet all three of them are experiencing the same effect of sleeplessness. Their obsession kind of is putting them in the same basket. So the next day, Shane pulls up to Dr. Leo's lab and is surprised to find out that he no longer works there. Not only that, the rest of the staff have cut ties with him due to his unorthodox theories about alternative medicine. This throws off Shane's plans to be cured, and he struggles with the acceptance that perhaps he has lost his solution to his problem. And as a result, Shane's urges kind of manifest into physical violence. On his way back to the hotel, we are served a very short yet uncomfortable scene where Shane gropes a woman. This could be interpreted as perhaps Shane giving in to his animalistic urges. Maybe, after the disappointment of knowing he's gonna have a hard time finding a solution, maybe he kind of accepts his fate. And as tension keeps building up, the maid and Shane have another interaction. So Shane walks in on the maid cleaning his room, and at this point, I'm at the edge of my seat, right? Because I'm expecting something to happen, and I know there's like some sexual tension between the two, and we've just seen Shane kind of accept, I guess, his violent side. The maid also knows something is wrong because the second she hears the door, she's kind of shocked about it. But in the weirdest kind of turn of events, just nothing happens. Like really nothing happens. Shane just lays in bed in his clothes, and the maid apologizes for being in his room when he returned, and he goes, "It's okay," and she just leaves. Everything up to this point between these two was just leading up to some sort of just violent kind of outburst, and you expect this to be the moment, and just nothing happens, which I think is really interesting. It's a really interesting choice by Claire Denis to just kind of, I don't know what the correct word is, to kind of like just dangle that idea in the viewer's mind and then just not deliver on it. And this is also in a weird way the most normal scene in the film, even though it's still a little bit weird because who lays in a hotel bed in their clothes like a shirt and a tie, but I think he's wearing a tie. It's the most normal interaction we've seen. Maybe it's the first time we've seen seen Shane act normal. Maybe that's it. When I was watching this the second time, I was thinking this kind of feels like we're lusting for something as the viewers. We're expecting something to happen, which is a little bit, I don't know, it's a little bit weird. It's a little bit twisted, I guess, but definitely interesting to think about. Also, at this point, we're kind of given more information about Shane's relationship with Dr. Leo and his wife. Apparently the three know each other. In the past, they've worked together. The narrative also suggests some sort of sexual connection between Shane and Dr. Leo's wife, which automatically introduces the concepts of betrayal and loyalty, which is, again, something that, is very prevalent throughout the whole film. I think June constantly feels betrayed by Shane because she's giving everything she has, and he doesn't return any of that. Similarly, Dr. Leo's extreme loyalty towards his wife and her constant betrayal of their marriage. It's also a link to the pre-opening credits scene where we see a couple passionately making out in the back of a car, kind of suggesting lust and infidelity and, trying to stay hidden. So Shane is contacted by the lab assistant who apparently has Dr. Leo's address, but before Shane can make his way there, he's interrupted by June, who I guess wants them to do like just regular, normal, honeymoon couple stuff in Paris. She doesn't say any of this, but we just cut to just this montage of them at the Notre Dame acting like a regular, normal couple. And again, there's no dialogue, which makes this whole thing like really kind of hard to follow, but also it just leaves a lot to be interpreted. This is a funny scene because we see Shane pretending to be Frankenstein, the well-known monster from Universal, which is a little foreshadowing given his actions later on in the film. Additionally, he's kind of like the monster hiding in plain sight, if you will. He might not have the physical attributes of Frankenstein, but he's definitely just as dangerous. We also have Jane's green scarf, which is wrapped around her neck in the beginning, but eventually flies off in the wind. On a metaphorical level, this can be perceived as June letting go of her jealousy of Shane's obsession with the maid and kind of them rekindling their relationship. But on a more literal sense, it could be considered like the uncovering of the neck, the part of the body which historically vampires have been really attracted to. And if at this point in the video you're wondering, I wonder what the horny teenagers have to do with all of this, well, we have some updates. They break into Dr. Leo's house again while he's away because now they're determined to save, the kidnapped woman upstairs. So one of them makes his way upstairs to her room, but it's covered in planks of wood because last time she cut through the door. There's this great scene where Corey kind of tries seducing him through the planks of wood, and it works. She gets him undressed and in his most vulnerable state. Then you have the goriest scene in the film where Corey kind of eats his face off. It's very interesting because you see this guy who thinks he's going to have the best moments of his life kind of turn into the last moments of his life. So Shane makes his way to Dr. Leo's, which by now has turned into a vampiric art studio, and the two vampires finally get to meet. Again, here we have an interesting shot of Corey kind of holding a match close to her face, maybe trying to feel the warmth against her skin, maybe the warmth of a human, maybe that human feeling, she's kind of longing for that. The two hug and soon their passionate embrace turns violent as Shane strangles Corey, which is definitely an unexpected turn of events. I wasn't quite sure what I was expecting though, to be completely honest. Then again, I interpreted this as Shane kind of trying to help her out. Maybe he's the only one who at least partially understands how she feels and perhaps he wanted to put her out of her misery. But the most unexpected thing happens right after, when her corpse just magically catches on fire. And there's nothing in the film to explain this or give any reasoning behind it, but after doing some research, it seems like fire is considered one of the very few ways you can actually kill a vampire, I guess. Then again, it doesn't explain how she caught fire to begin with, but maybe I'm missing something. Then we cut to that same night when Shane's getting intimate with June, which, side note, this is a really weird scene to cut to after we saw him strangling a woman and things aren't going smoothly for him in bed. So he gets out of bed, goes to the bathroom and kind of finishes the job himself, which, understandably makes June pretty upset. Shane thinks the best course of action after this is to leave the room and go sleep on a bench outside, like in the street. And the only thing June says is, "You lied to me," which I believe is referencing a part earlier when he said he would never hurt her. So I guess he physically doesn't hurt her, but emotionally this is just killing her. Next time we see Shane, he's adopted a puppy, which I'm not sure if this is a way to humanize Shane or if it's simply a way of rekindling his relationship with June. However, he does seem to be way more affectionate towards it than he is towards June, so take from that what you will. On the subway home, he decides to once again kind of act on his perverted urges, and he gets really close and uncomfortable with this woman standing in front of him. He even takes a step further and puts his lips by her ear, like he's about to whisper something in her ear. It's just so weird. The extreme close-up shots just make this extremely unsettling. So back at the hotel, the maid is once again cleaning Shane's room, only this time she decides to lay on his bed and take a cigarette break, which is super weird, I know, but then again, this is Paris. So this might be the maid's way of kind of reclaiming her space. This is where she works, and the last few experiences she's had in this room have been really uncomfortable. Later on in the day, Shane returns to the room and kind of can instantly tell someone's laid on his bed, and his reaction is kind of expected at this point because he's a weirdo, but he takes a big whiff of the bed. I'm not sure if this is to kind of identify who it was or he already knew who it was, and this is his way of kind of getting close to her, I guess. Apparently, this is all it takes for his predatory urges to kind of creep back to the surface, because after this, we cut to him creeping up on someone in the basement of the hotel, and it's the maid. For some reason, the maid kind of, when she sees him, she's not surprised or bothered by his presence. I'm not sure if this potentially shows, you know, some sexual attraction from the maid towards Shane, but Shane gets all touchy, and for the first few seconds, the maid kind of doesn't seem to mind, or she even kind of seems to be into it because she wraps her arms around him. The whole thing feels uncomfortable, like it feels like there's some uncertainty about it. Once again, Claire Denis does an excellent job of creating tension using ambience, because there's no dialogue here, and it feels like a scene where there should be dialogue. And at this point, it's kind of hard to tell whether the maid's shocked, scared, or attracted to him, but things soon become clear. So she pushes back and Shane applies force. The way she's been moving and acting kind of seems like she's under some sort of spell, like she's not fully conscious. And as things escalate, Shane gets more violent, laying her on the ground and biting her, similar to how Corey beat the teenager's face off. The maid tries fighting him off, but it doesn't work. And before you know it, Shane has claimed his first victim. So after this, we cut to a scene in the hotel room where Shane's in the shower, kind of washing away all the blood from his face and hands, as June returns to find the puppy. June asks Shane how he's feeling, and he says he's feeling good, and the two kind of hug, and we have this close-up shot of June's eyes, which kind of imply that she knows something has changed. Now, whether or not she's aware of the extent of Shane's actions is up for debate, but I don't really think that matters. June is the supportive wife of the disloyal husband, or the loving parent of an addict. Similar to Dr. Leo, she's there to support her significant other purely out of love. For Shane, claiming his first victim has given him some sort of clarity, similar to the shame Corey would feel after her killings. But then again, it's kind of expected on June's end to kind of just take that role of the supportive wife. I think she's shown signs of that. Her character is the most consistent throughout this whole film. She seems to be very firm in her beliefs and her views. Obviously, the cannibalistic and the vampiric side of this film is kind of linked to infidelity in real life, where either the husband or the wife will cheat on their significant other, and sometimes the other will be able to tell, or even if they're told and they know, they'll sometimes choose to stay for whatever reason. And that was Trouble Every Day. I didn't know anything about the film or the director Claire Denis, but I was pleasantly surprised. I loved the sparing use of dialogue and the decision to accompany scenes of violence with music. It kind of reminded me of the 2016 French film Raw, which is, by the way, one of my favorite films, which also had a unique score and also had cannibalism linked to sexual urges. I think from a narrative point, I think the film could have been slightly better, perhaps if certain characters and ideas were more developed. For example, we see the maid had a boyfriend, but we're not quite sure what role he plays. Like, is this important, or why is it important? Similarly, there was a scene where June visits one of Shane's old landlords, and we get some information about how Shane was when he was younger. But then again, I'm not quite sure if this adds much to the plot. I'm sure there was a reason these scenes made it to the final cut. It just, I'm not quite sure what they did for me. Let's just say that. But yeah, thank you for sitting down and dissecting this film with me. If you enjoyed this lighthearted analysis of Trouble Every Day by Claire Denis and are a fan of looking too deep into films that none of your friends will ever watch, feel free to subscribe and like, and I guess I'll see you guys next time.